let's start this over again. Hello, I have excellent videos on dry fasting with images teaching how I lost 150 pounds watching TV in bed personally and why I think exercise and calories are the wrong approach to weight loss. Dry fasting made me lose half my body weight. Poof! And now for the show. Fixing the Born rule with the mathematics of idealism. We select history in quantum mechanics. That is important. Very important for understanding, but it needs to exchange probabilities in the Born rule with something firmer. The universe is Wigner's friend. No observer stands outside reality. An expectation-weighted collapse selects the history we mistake for the past. Revealing reality is shared mental space-time shaped by all observer expectations across all of space-time. Why should the Born rule and cubism be ruled by now moments that cannot exist in physics? This channel explores the idealism interpretation of quantum mechanics because faith in outcome has applied mathematics. Expectations across the whole of space-time are considered in quantum collapse. This channel looks at the mathematics of idealism, the notion we live in idea format, that you are an idea. This is replacing the Born rule with weighted expectation. The Born rule is the standard rule that every quantum physicist knows. The Born rule tells us how much weight to assign to each possible outcome. In ordinary language, quantum mechanics gives us the field of possibilities, and the Born rule tells us how strongly each possibility is represented before measurement. That part works. I'm not here to pretend the Born rule has failed experimentally. It has not. The issue is more important. The Born rule predicts statistics. It tells us how often outcomes should appear across repeated experiments. But statistics are not the same thing as actuality. Probability rule is not an explanation of why this one world is experienced instead of another candidate world. Sean Carroll and other physicists would look you in the eye and falsely claim ever many worlds must play out as an answer to superposition, unless we alter the Born rule. Do you think there is a zillion versions of you living every possible outcome? Is that intuitive to you? Now look at the center of the slide. You see one quantum state opening into several possible histories. Candidate history A, candidate history B, candidate history C. The standard model gives each branch a mathematical weight, but it still feels like the final selection as probability, dice rolls. It says nature is random. This interpretation says no random, no probabilities. It's all weighted expectations, all weighted observer collapse, WOC. This interpretation says that what we have been calling probability is an incomplete description of selection. The missing factor is observer-linked expectation. We could live in ever many worlds, or we could select one world that we know and love. Quantum mechanics has needed a selector to finish it. This is what this video and my other videos do, and my math and papers. Now look at the upper right of this image. The standard rule says take the quantum strength of the outcome and use that as the probability weight. The pose rule says take that quantum strength, but do not stop there. Multiply it by the total expectation weight attached to that outcome across all of space-time. That is the whole move. We do not erase quantum mechanics. We do not throw away the wave function. We do not pretend amplitudes do nothing. We say amplitudes provide the available structure, but they do not finish the job. They describe what they can be selected. They do not by themselves explain why one lived history becomes selected. How many one worlds becomes the one world we know and love. The extra term on that slide, the symbol that looks like a horseshoe omega, represents the total observer linked weight. Think of it as the total participation pressure attached to a possible history. If enough expectations collapse expectation, then it actually will put a thought into your head. So our thoughts are steered by this quantum collapse process. A branch with a high quantum strength but weak observer weight may not win. A branch with a sufficient quantum strength and enormous coherent expectation may dominate. So the selector is no longer blind probability. The selector is weighted participation. That is why the center diagram matters. The top branch receives repeated support from observer moments across time. The middle branch receives less. The lower branch receives still less. All three may be mathematical available, but only one becomes the world we experience. This is why I say probability is demoted. Probability becomes a surface description of a deeper weighting process. What looked like chance was actually incomplete accounting. We were counting amplitude and ignoring expectation. I'm not saying consciousness matters and then running away before anyone asks for the math. We are saying the Born rule is missing a weighting term. The standard quantum aptitude remains in the formula, but is no longer the whole selector. We give you the math. I've given the math. The outcome is weighted by amplitude and the distributed observer expectation. For non-physicists, imagine three possible versions of the world trying to become real. Standard quantum mechanics tells you how strongly each version appears in the quantum setup. This interpretation adds a second question. How much expectation, record, observer partition, and future compatible coherence does each version carry? Because they have to marry. The winner is not merely the branch with permission to exist. The winner is the branch with the strongest total support. This is how thought enters the model without being cheap magic. Thought is not a little ghost elf pushing particles around. Not entirely. Thought is the lived expression of observer weight in a history selection process. The slide's right side box says it's simply the wave function tells us what outcomes are available. The squared amplitude gives us the local quantum weight. The expectation term adds observer-linked weight across time. That is the new arithmetic, the new Born rule. Hilborn rule, if you like. It's my math, and I am Wayne Hilborn. I teach we weight collapse with mind, not simply observation. I have added this mathematics, which explains thoughts themselves in mathematical format, which is a deeper side note and topic altogether. The Hilborn rule explains all of reality and thought. Quantum mechanics gives the possibilities, weighted expectation selects the history. Cubism, QBISM, is altered and more provocative if we alter the Born rule in accordance. But that's another video. We must add expectations from across space-time block because now moments shall forever remain mythical. There's no such thing as now moments in physics, and that's another story you should know if you're watching this video. Collapse in QM is history selection, not just future selection. And that's the point most physicists and philosophers miss. We choose our own histories with this new rule. Without the rule, our histories were just random, based on random observation, because 36% of the physicists out there believe that we create our histories with constant collapse, but they don't think of it as history, but it's not history selection if it's just done with probabilities and randomness. Because we need the selector to collapse the wave function in a certain way that we know and love. And notice what this does to the old randomness story. Randomness was never an explanation. Randomness was the name that we gave the gap in understanding. It was the shrug we placed between mathematics and the world we experience. This interpretation removes that shrug. It says one world is experienced because one history gathers the most coherent total weight. The Born rule was the skeleton. Weighted expectation supplies the muscle. So the claim of the slide is not the Born rule is stupid. The claim is sharper. The Born rule is incomplete as ontology. It works as a statistical rule, but it doesn't have any stochastic mechanism. It does not explain actuality. To explain actuality, we must include observer weight. We must remove the randomness. Collapse is not a blind dice roll. Collapse is weighted history selection. This video suggests the Born rule requires a weighting mechanism from across all Planck moments in space-time. This video provides the new mathematics. I have other videos explaining its implications to mind, memory, and idealism. Thank you very much. This is Wayne Hilborn, and this is my view on updating the Born rule to fix quantum mechanics once and for all. Thank you.